From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, January the 6th, the year of our Lord, 2016. And now, here they are, left over from 2015, still breathing on their own, Jim and Rich.
You had to think and remember it was 2016, didn't you, John?
Yes.
I thought so. I thought you hesitated there for a moment. Well, here we are once again with another year of two guys trying to figure out what to talk about and managing to kill an hour doing it.
That was never any problem.
No. We just have no idea when we start out where we're going, and when we plan it. With topics, we usually forget what we planned.
The only problem that we have with this setup is we don't have guys like Alex Molnar or Herb Best or Don Nordovit passing by that we could, all teachers that we used to harass when we were in the English lab.
That's right. All the people that we used to pick on, and then they'd threaten to kick us out.
Exactly.
Now we just have John, and John sometimes just nods off while we're here, and
he's good at that.
Yeah, and he's just, of course, resting his eyes. Of course.
Kevin always used to say we had the easiest show to do because he would just crank it up and off away we would go.
Yeah.
So you got something in your mouth there, buddy.
Yeah,
hey,
talking with my mouth full.
Talking with your mouth full. Now
all those things you never were supposed to do.
Now you're getting like some of these other people that I hear on the radio that. It's just aggravating, talking with your mouth full. All right, you said you had a few things.
Do you remember, am I that old, am I getting that crotchety, but wasn't New Year's Day the Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Orange Bowl?
Man, I was thinking the same thing.
Then they slipped in the Fiesta Bowl there, which was fine, because they'd have some decent matchups.
Yeah, the Fiesta Bowl came in later.
Yeah.
I remember, Jim, you'd pick between the Cotton and Sugar because that was the first game. Then you'd have the Rose Bowl, which really always to me was the most intense game of the day. That was the game you were really concentrated on because you had a Big Ten team in there.
Yeah.
And then, the Pacific Coast teams, you'd always have somebody interesting. It would actually... Not much variety, though. It used to be either USC, UCLA, or Stanford most of the time.
Actually, it was all I seem to remember was USC and UCLA. Stanford.
Well, I mean, when Plunkett was there,
that's right.
They
Plunkett.
were in. And,
that's right. Actually, I saw, just speaking of that, I saw an interesting feature about him going back to his high school recently.
But and then the Orange Bowl was sort of just an enjoyable game to just cap off the day. And
it was nice. I would get phone calls from friends of mine in later years wanting a quote on the over under the length of the Orange Bowl halftime show so they could put a bet on it.
That was a huge feature, the Orange Bowl halftime show.
Oh yeah. We finally had to set the criteria that the halftime would be from the time that from the end of the quarter, the end of the second quarter, to the kickoff. And that way we'd say that would be halftime.
Okay.
Because we'd argue about it too much.
Well, Jim, you know what? Though, continue your thought. I want to hear more of what you have to say about that.
I mean, what happened this year with what two games wound up being on December 31st?
It was the Cotton Bowl and the Orange, I think.
And the Orange Bowl. No, Cotton Bowl. Yeah, Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like New Year's.
No, and actually their times were totally different from what they had been on New Year's Day. Orange, I think, was the one they showed early.
Orange Bowl
used to be the late game.
Yeah, that was the late game.
Cotton was in the evening, and that used to be the morning,
11 o'clock
early game.
Cotton Bowl would start about 10 o'clock in the morning here.
Jim, one thing I know that we texted about this, but I'm not a big fan of the way I put it to you in the text. I think is I'm not a big fan of these manufactured games. And the more I thought about this, I don't know if that's this is a pretty flimsy argument, but I think what I would like to say is that when the bowl committees, the bowls were independent bowls, and obviously worked with the NCAA, but when they got to choose their own matchups, this is a vested interest of theirs.
Sure.
And you got some really, over the years, some outstanding bowl games. Of course, in some instances, I think there might have been, well, for sure, the Big Ten and the Pac-10, had a contract, and they always played the Rose Bowl. And I think there might have been one other similar thing with other conferences.
Yeah, every bowl game had their affiliations,
right?
The way they would go.
And those were always seemed to be, I mean, it's not universal, but they seem to be interesting matchups. I think these manufactured where, okay, we decided that Clemson, Michigan State, Alabama, and Oklahoma are the 4 top teams, whatever the criteria were, and we're going to have them play on New Year's Eve night, really sort of sucks.
It does, because they're trying to create a new, as they said, a new tradition for New Year's night. You realize their ratings were off 45%?
Well,
of course, you
not a
also,
very good night to show football.
No, it's not a good night to show football, and plus you had 2 games that were absolute blowouts.
Now, when I was a kid, I think, let's just say something like the Blue Bonnet Bowl might have been on New Year's Eve night, and you look forward to that because your parents maybe were going out for New Year's.
Or the
and you had
Liberty
something
Bowl,
to watch.
the Liberty Bowl
maybe,
or something like that. And now I don't even know. Well,
I don't know if those exist. Yeah.
I think it exists, but it's under the some corporate name now, and you can't even remember what it is. I think my favorite one this year was the Russell Athletic Bowl, simply because they couldn't call it what it really is, the Jockstrap Bowl.
Well, I what's the one? Which is the one with Starve in it?
Oh, I don't know. Feed my starving coaches. I don't know what it was.
Something. I got to say, I don't know. I think that we really were in a situation prior to this where less was actually more, because we have 40 bowl games now. I don't know. I want to say at least 2-3 teams with sub 500 records were in the bowl games.
I think there were 3 teams that were 5-7, and I think they may have won their games.
I mean, once you get in the game, anything's possible.
Yeah, and I think the attitude, you had to wonder what kind of game you would have, but I think you had a bunch of kids out there going, "Hey, we got one more chance."
Oh, I mean, it's not from that point of view, it's not a terrible thing.
No,
but I'm looking at it from the perspective of what are you really interested in seeing?
Yeah, and I'm honest. It was funny because I noticed one writer handicapped all 40 bowl games, from worst to best. And he there were a couple of comments that he made along the way, especially when there was one game was a 6-6 team versus a 5-7 team. And his pick was, I'm not picking this game. I don't pick anything with a 5-7 team in a bowl game. Don't watch this, read a book.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, and there's just
it's not very interesting.
What do we do? What are they doing? They're chasing after the corporate dollar. That's really what it comes to. The other thing now that we suddenly have the New Year's 6 bowl games, and I can't even remember who the other one is after the Fiesta Bowl gets added to the mix. I can't even remember who the 6th one that they've added here. That they were really god-awful games because the average margin was 24 points.
Yeah, the games were not very good.
And the Big Ten and the Pac or the Big Ten and the Big 12 seem to be the culprits at contributing to the margin. I was not terribly surprised that Alabama beat Michigan State. I was surprised they beat them 38-0.
Jim, the one thing I keep thinking about with Alabama, and I didn't. I watched a little bit of the Clemson and Oklahoma game.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of that at the end.
And I didn't have a big takeaway one way or another from that.
No,
but
by then it was a blowout.
I got to say, Alabama over the last, let's say, half a dozen years, regardless of whether they won their bowl game or where they finished, are just, when you look at the horses that they produce up front, quality offensive and defensive linemen,
man.
At the college level.
Yeah.
They're very, any day that you play them, they can trample all over you, regardless of who you are.
Michigan, and when we watched the end of the Clemson Oklahoma game, that was kind of just a blowout. We were actually up in Evanston on New Year's Eve. We went to the first night up there, which is always, they brought that back, and that's a fun night, going from hearing different musical groups play at different in churches, and it was a lot of fun. But before we went to where we wanted to see some music, we stopped and had pizza at Giordano's in Evanston. There, I'll give him a plug. And the Michigan State-Alabama game had just started, and I'm watching this, and I'm going, okay, Michigan State's not able to run.
Yeah, they were having a hard time.
They were having a hard time running. The defense didn't give Derrick Henry a whole lot. I mean, he did have 75 yards. But they kind of contained him, but they just couldn't do anything with the passing offense of Alabama. They just couldn't defend it. And once you got behind, you had to go to the air, and their defense was just much, much too strong.
Yeah.
I expected the way the numbers looked, I was expecting 24, 24-10, 24-17, 24-20, something like that. But to see 38-0, boy.
I have to say, and one of the things I texted to you, and I don't think you gave me a response, so this will be a fresh response. In those four teams, you had Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield, is it? And Connor Cook.
Yeah, Connor Cook.
And then, is it Jack Coker?
Jake
Coker.
Jake Coker.
Were the four quarterbacks, I'd say Jake Coker, the least ballyhooed of the four.
Right.
But and I'm not saying that based on one game that the others are, not up to snuff. But it made me think how difficult it really is for a NFL personnel to evaluate a guy who's going to be able to make that step to the pros as a quarterback and do well.
Oh yeah, I mean the names that I'm hearing right now are Parker Lynch at Memphis. Can't think of his first name, but Goff.
Jason Goff
from
California.
From California. Those two are kind of looked at right now. And the season, the NFL season is only one day. We're only 2 days into the preseason or into the postseason, and I've already seen 2 mock drafts in the first round.
Okay.
And a lot of them peg that. They're pegging Connor Cook anywhere from at least the first 2 drafts I had. I think one had him at 13, going to the Eagles. Somebody else had him, I think, at 18 or 19. And I it's really, really difficult to peg a quarterback.
Well, yeah, I've been reading all year. I hadn't seen him until New Year's Eve night. Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, his team put up a lot of points. Yeah. But as I watched, excuse me, Joe. As I watched, he wasn't really impressing me that much. Mayfield, especially when you saw him on the sideline, looked like he was deer in the headlights type of look. And Connor Cook was, and I know his team didn't have a good game, and as you say, they weren't able to run it, so that put a lot of pressure on the passing. He wasn't he didn't look as good as I thought he would. Coker looked probably better than all of them, but
Coker surprised everyone with his passing.
I think in years past when we've talked about Alabama, I think when A.J. McCarron was there, I had made the comment, or maybe it was when we were just talking at home, the family watching TV, but I like the way Alabama mixes its offense. I mean, the run and the pass mixed in there in good percentages. I'm really sort of skeptical of teams that just throw so much. And, I just didn't see, say, Watson and Mayfield for sure being as good as I thought as what I would see. And so it's just a difficult thing. I'm not knocking them. There are probably days they look better than they did on that particular day, but it's not a knock on them. But it's just, you know what? You get these offenses where these guys are throwing and throwing and throwing, and the numbers are going up and up and up. And how do you really sort that all out?
A Chip Kelly offense.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty hard to sort it all out.
No, because you get these guys that run these college hybrid spread offenses, and can't come in and handle a. There's guys. I mean, how many guys? When they go to camp, have never taken a snap under center.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking as I was thinking about this subject is how many guys were prolific passers in college that never did anything in the pros. The first guy I thought of, he was on the cover of the Street and Smith magazine. I think probably the last year I ever got one was Sonny Sixkiller.
Yeah.
I mean, a prolific passer.
Yeah.
All other than and Jim McMahon was not a prolific passer, even though he's a good pro quarterback. He was a prolific passer in college, not so much in the pros. No. But
it was that offense that they ran out there.
BYU quarterbacks, Ty Detmer, Gifford Nielsen,
right.
McMahon, that all put up huge numbers with BYU. And then, other than McMahon, the other guys were never really much as pro quarterbacks. So it's, those numbers become very tantalizing, but how much do they really mean?
Got a great example going right now.
And who's it?
Manziel.
Johnny Manziel is another good example,
yeah,
right?
Great example. Prolific passer in college. Can't take his head out of his rear end now.
Well, you know what? That brings up another interesting thing. I was trying to tell this to a few guys, and they weren't really picking up on it. But I said, geez, if Johnny Manziel can't play in the NFL because he's a bad boy, he likes to party. Well, would there be any place in the league for Bobby Lane today?
Oh, no. Bobby Lane would have been off to rehab, and then off to rehab again, and off to rehab after that.
Yeah.
So the problem, I think, the problem with Manziel is obviously there's an issue of immaturity and the fact that he's also apparently a drunk.
Well, so is probably a lot of guys.
And so is a lot of guys. But, the problem with Manziel is he keeps trying to lie his way out of it.
Well, you know what, though, Jim? I'm not a big one for the victim society, but I have to say our circumstances, or what he perceives as what they want him to be or say or do, causing him to have to lie. In other words, the league has really picked out Johnny Manziel in this case and said, oh, we don't like your antics. We don't like the fact that you party. Yeah. Well, okay, let's put it this way. At this point in time, he's still a partier, okay? And so is he put in the position now where he's almost got to lie to please them, but he also knows he's still who he is. He likes to go out and have a few, or more than a few.
And I mean, he also has to take a look at his own future and the fact that, gee, Cleveland's got the second draft pick. Here goes another quarterback.
Think about Bo Belinsky, Jim.
Oh gosh.
You know what? The guys like that generally probably don't care. I'm not saying that they don't care about what they're doing when they're doing it, but Johnny Manziel, Bo Belinsky, they used to say he I don't care if he was playing in the minors or the majors, he was going to party wherever he was at. Didn't matter to him. He was going to have a good time. And he wasn't thinking about his next move, maybe dumping him from the majors to the minors. When you get a guy with that type of personality,
wound up selling cars at the end too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Johnny Manziel he probably even gives that a thought.
No, I don't think he does either.
And the other thing is, I wouldn't give it a thought either because just based on what he's done, he was a high draft. Well, he was a first-round pick.
He
right?
was a low
first round,
low
but a
first round pick.
But the other day, somebody says to me, Tara's boyfriend Donnie says to me, I hope the Bears lose this last game or the last two games. Maybe it was a couple weeks ago,
so
they can get the better draft
pick.
pick. And I said, you know what, Don? That's not right. Yeah. I said, win as many as you can, get a little momentum or a little confidence with the group you have. And he goes, but the draft. And I'm thinking, okay, are we going to improve 5-6 spots in the draft? And the other thing is, you could take the 7 best players in the draft. Say somehow you got the first 7 draft picks. You put them on your team, whoever that team may be. That doesn't mean your team's going to be better.
No.
I mean, those are all rookies.
That's right. They're all rookies. And I mean,
some
think
of them will
about
be good and some of them won't.
Jadeveon Clowney was the number 1 pick in the draft.
I just saw that. I thought I had saw a crawl where was it Mario Williams?
Yeah.
Who was the number 1 pick in the draft, and went from Houston to Buffalo, was cut by Buffalo.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, here's a guy who was another number 1 pick in the draft.
Okay.
So, I just, to me, the draft is not, it's important, but it's not going to do it all for you.
Yeah, I mean, we went through, you and I had a conversation last spring right around the draft when I started looking at draft picks. Mm-hmm. And what sort of value you could find lower draft picks. And some of them were pretty doggone good.
Oh, definitely.
You got some Hall of Famers who were taken in the 5th round, 6th round. Back in the old days when there were 17 rounds.
Yeah, I believe Bart Starr was like a 17th round draft choice.
15th or 17th, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Unitas was a free agent.
Well, Johnny Unitas was drafted.
Oh, that's right, by the Steelers.
He was drafted by the Steelers, and I think in the 9th round.
Well, there's another thing, though, Jim. I remember reading, I think it was Dan Rooney's biography, and he talked about that a little bit. And Johnny Unitas was a fairly, I think he had some connection to somebody in Pittsburgh. I think that's how he ended up being drafted. But it came down to, in this case, and I don't remember the whole situation, but it almost ended up to be politics. Or the coach felt more secure with, say, a couple of veteran quarterbacks, whoever they had at that point.
Wasn't Jim Finks involved in this somehow when he was back in his...
He might have been. He might have even been playing at the time.
I think he was playing at the time.
So, it's there's the other thing. I mean, depending on who's there as the personnel people, the coaching staff, what team you're on. I always like to use the example of Joe Montana, and Vinny Testaverde. I'm thinking if Vinny Testaverde ends up with the 49ers and Joe Montana ends up with Tampa Bay, are we still talking about them in the same terms today as, is Joe Montana still a legend and a Hall of Famer, and you still see him on a commercial? And Vinny Testaverde ended up with a very, very good professional career.
Long career.
But he was maligned for a long time because he started out with Tampa and was getting shellacked.
Yeah.
Which wasn't his fault, but he, as usual, the quarterback got a lot of the blame. But, I mean, he's not the legend that Montana is.
No.
But if you would have reversed them in the draft,
right, what would it have been?
How would that have worked
out? I mean, everybody always said when the Bears lost that first-round draft pick after the 1-13 season, and Pittsburgh was able to take Terry Bradshaw, what would it have been like if Terry Bradshaw would have been the Bears' quarterback?
Yeah.
Would we have had 5 Super Bowls?
Well, you know what, though? People conveniently ignore the fact that Chuck Noll was not ever, even when Bradshaw finally did establish himself, was never, ever totally happy with Terry Bradshaw's game.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Hanratty had come in and replaced him a few times.
Sure.
They were trying to replace him with Joe Gilliam, who had some issues off the field, and that never happened.
Jefferson Street Joe.
And, Bradshaw finally, through I would say probably through perseverance, and then as he learned the game and he got more on the same page with Noel, he finally established himself. But he was never, I mean, especially early on, it was raw. Came from a small university out of southwestern Louisiana or something like that.
I think it was Southwest Louisiana.
And not a really that big of a favorite with Chuck Noll. So how would he would not have been the magic bullet for the 1-13 Bears, because he certainly wasn't the magic bullet for the 1-13 Steelers.
No. Mm-mm.
There was a whole lot more to that team to make it into 5 Super Bowl champions than just Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah. And actually talking about the Bears and making it into something, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done here.
No, I don't. I sort of disagree with that.
There's some. You know what? I mean, I looked at these guys this year, and I watched second half of the game Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at them, and I think you have a case of a coaching staff getting a lot out of a little.
Yeah, but see, you see what they've done though, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, the Cubs took 5 years.
Yeah.
To tear down and build up. The Bears are doing it as the season progresses, and they've already done the tear down and still had a little success as the season went on.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest fear is not who do we lose player wise. I don't want to see Fangio or Gase go anywhere, especially Fangio.
I think you're going to see Gase go.
He might.
You know, he's got 3 interviews this week. He's interviewing for
Miami,
for the Eagles job
Philly.
and the Browns job.
Yeah. Well, good luck with any of those.
Yeah. You've got 3. I wouldn't. I think the and the whole situation with the Browns is they have got this guy Sashi Brown, who is the executive vice president of football operations, and he's one of those non-football guys, but analytics, you know, all this stuff. And he's going to hire the coach, and then the 2 of them are going to hire the general manager, which is backwards.
That's sort of backwards.
That's backwards.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got Haslam that has no patience. Actually, it was kind of funny. I saw somebody put a satire on YouTube, and I found the clip yesterday. It was like the Sarah McLachlan animal commercials, you know, ASPCA commercials. But it was pictures of sad Browns fans. And, you know, please help us. If you're an experienced head coach, if you're an experienced general manager, if you do really well playing Madden football, contact us immediately.
Well, out of those 3 cities, Jim, that you mentioned, the only one that I think I would take a stab at would be Philly.
Yeah, I think so.
I think you've got some material there, and you've got I think the ownership is, even though they got talked into something that they shouldn't have done with Chip Kelly prior to this season, where they gave him control of personnel. I think you have decent ownership.
Chip Kelly fired Chip Kelly.
Yeah. Miami, though, and Cleveland, I would stay away from at this point if I was a prospective head coach, because I think the situations are just not good.
What do you think of the situation in San Francisco?
I think that is not good either, and I'm hoping that they don't come knocking on Vic Fangio's door.
Ask him to come back.
And ask him to come back. But I have a feeling that they might be so benighted that they won't even think to do that. I really think Fangio, I mean, nothing against Tom Sula. I'm sure he was a good coach.
He was just not in the right. He was not in the right spot.
But he should not have been the guy to begin with.
No.
I mean, Fangio would have been the guy. If you're going to hire from the staff that existed after Harbaugh left, Fangio should have been the guy you hired to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
How Tom Sula got it, and I mean, you know, Tom Sula did nothing wrong to get the job. I'm not saying that, but how they decided to do that, I have no clue what they were doing there.
There was nothing there. And yes, John just nodded towards me. Let's take a station break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, January the 6th, the year of our Lord 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich and Armchair Experts.
And we're still sitting up and breathing on our own.
I thought for a minute that after John introduced us by name and he sat back, that he was going to forget to give the call letters and everything else and just go back to sleep. But then he snapped himself out of it. And
He
got
remembered.
the rest of it done.
He remembered where he was and what was going on, and that's right. We just try to keep an eye on you, John. There was one other thing I was thinking of coaching. Oh, obviously the Giants' job is open now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Remember when we talked when Bill Foster was the Northwestern basketball coach, and we said, he didn't do anything wrong.
No,
but it just seemed like he was running out of steam.
Yeah,
and it just was time for a change. I feel the same way about Tom Coughlin.
Oh, it was time.
Yeah, it was just time for him.
Honestly, I'm surprised that he didn't retire after he won the last Super Bowl, because he was 65 then.
Yeah, I don't think he's the guy with the retirement
mentality.
I
don't think so either. And it was nice. Last night I happened to see some articles, Bleacher Report, with tweets from his players. Mm-hmm. Justin Tuck had a rather lengthy posting on there that, talking about the conversations that the two of them used to have, talking football and talking about life. He said, when you made me a captain, he said, I was so proud of that, and I'd get to the facility at 6:00 in the morning, and you were already there. He said, and then the next morning I said, well, I'm going to get there at 5:30, and you were already there. He said, next day, he said, I'm really going to show him. He said, I'm going to get there at 5:00. He said, and you were already there. He said, and then I felt the hood of your car and realized you had slept there.
Yeah, right.
He said, you not only taught us about being good football players. He said, but you taught us about being good husbands, good fathers.
That's a good thing.
Good men.
That's a good thing.
And other players saying it was an honor to play for you. Eli Manning saying, he didn't fail us. We failed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw some of the Niners players interviewed after Tom Sula got whacked. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, I don't think they had as long of a time.
They only had a year.
Tom Sula. Yeah. But they did say, this isn't, we're the ones who went out there and lost the games. It's not, it wasn't the coach. And the ESPN talking heads said they liked hearing that. I think that's usually the reality. But I would say this: is it nice to hear the players say that? Yes, but I'm not going to commend them, because I think they've come to realize that's the thing to say.
That's the proper thing to say.
So you're not going to, unless they really detest the coach or something.
Yeah. And I think the issue, like with Coughlin, is, to quote a term I think I heard recently with Jimmy Butler, saying he coached them hard.
Yeah. Well,
and they respected him for it. And I always remember reading a book about the Baltimore Ravens. I think the year they I don't know if it was the year they won the Super Bowl or somewhere after that.
That's the Feinstein book, I think.
I think John it was, Feinstein. But the Brian Billick making
Next Man Up, I think.
Might have been. Brian Billick talking about the fact that they traditionally would play their last exhibition game against the Giants. And when Jim, what was his name? I keep wanting to say Fossil, but he was there. He was there. Might have been Fossil, yeah.
So about the Giants coach?
Giants coach,
yeah,
Jim Fossil. Jim Fossil. was the head coach there. He said the last game of the season, we were relaxed. It gave you an opportunity to get some guys in. He said you took it seriously, but he said you didn't take it that seriously. He says now Tom Coughlin is the coach. He said Tom Coughlin takes the pregame meal seriously.
Mm-hmm. Jim, I'm thinking the first time I was ever a head coach, I coached a little league team, football, and I thought, let the kids have some fun and blah blah blah. We went out there the first game and we got killed. And the next week at practice, the first day of practice, I had one heck of a time. The kids before practice, the kids are throwing the football around, just running around, and I had a heck of a time getting the team together to get them lined up for calisthenics. And I realized that I had made a huge mistake, even though these are young kids, because there was two things. First off, this wasn't about fun, even for young kids. They wanted to do well, and I wasn't helping them to do well. Okay, I was helping them to fail. Because I wasn't being tough enough with them. Or put it this way, I won't even say tough. Not demanding things of them. That would be a better way to put it.
There was an issue of accountability, and they weren't ready for it.
Then, as the years went by, and I thought about this, and obviously my philosophy changed, and I would say in that particular instance, from that day forward, we worked harder. I demanded more of them. We became a better team. We were never a good team, but we were better than what we showed the first game. And then I thought about, and this might be a strange place to say this in a sports program, about love. And what is love? And what is, so is love something where you're doing something that I know isn't right for you or doesn't help you, and I just say nothing and let you end up eating yourself to death or whatever? Or is it demanding or having a say in you doing something right and doing it the proper way so that you can walk around with pride and say, hey, even in the times when we lost, we know we were doing it the right way. We just weren't maybe the better team. So I started to think about love and what is really love all about. Is it just some gushy thing, or is it something where there's really a standard involved?
Mm-hmm.
And, some people say, you don't be so hard on them. They're just kids. Well, you know what? They're kids that want to be football players, okay? They're little football players, but they want to do something, okay? They want to be good individually and as a team. And it's on you to show them the proper respect and the proper love to, make them toe the line and learn how to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. Right. And so when I think about guys like Tom Coughlin or, the late Vince Lombardi, who were looked at as, very stern guys, I look at them as, were they stern, but they were very loving guys because they wanted their people to be the best they could be, and they held them to a standard.
Yeah, and I think when I talked about the Bears earlier this year, and especially with the coaching staff they had, and getting a lot out of a little. You may have seen that there with this coaching staff.
You did.
You taught them that they were taught how to prepare for a game. They were taught how to go out and execute to the best of their ability. They may not have been the best players on the field, but they were executing to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who looks at Jay Cutler this year and said he's the problem with this team, you're not looking.
Yeah, you're not really looking.
You're not really looking. You're just taking an easy out and deciding, well, he sucked before, he sucks this year. And it was kind of funny. I noticed one of his comments after Sunday's game, when asked if Adam Gase how it would affect them if Adam Gase left to become a head coach somewhere else, and his comment was to the effect was, well, the bad news is Adam would be leaving. The good news is he has to leave his system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the same thing, and Fox even said that too yesterday with the end of the season press conference, that if he leaves, if Gase leaves, if Fangio leaves, well, the systems stay. He said, we're about the systems. So somebody else comes in, you tweak it a little. You change this slightly. You get somebody else in. It's about the systems, and you know what I mean. When you look at this team, there's so many things that they need to do to strengthen themselves. That you're going to have to look for people that are going to fit your system.
Yeah,
I think one of the on the two mock drafts I saw yesterday. One player that I think would be a great fit here is inside linebacker Reggie Ragland from Alabama.
Yeah, there was a guy. I'm glad you brought that name up because it wouldn't have come to my mind. But there was a guy that I don't think I had ever seen play before that I was really impressed with is Reggie Ragland.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, we saw like the first quarter and a half the other night before we went out, and I was checking my score constantly on my phone, and we just decided we didn't need to go back to the hotel and watch the end of the ball game.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the guy on the other side of the ball from Sparty, Bulla, who's got
he's going to be back. He's a junior.
He's a junior. And there's a guy that I kept thinking to myself, geez, Hank Bulla. I know that name from way back.
Sure. I mean, this is the third generation.
Third or fourth generation.
Third or fourth. His brother played, and there's another one. So this is going to be the fourth Bulla that's going to be. There's another one that I think is a freshman.
But I think you're right, Jim. From our perspective on the outside looking in and just trying to intuit, what you would think the Bears would be looking for in a football player, in this case, an inside linebacker, I think Reggie Ragland would be, from what I could see, would be excellent.
Now, let's just say if the philosophy is going to be the best player available, okay, and let's just say for some fluke, Goff, Lynch, Cook are on the board at when the Bears go draft at 11, right? Number 11 or number 9?
It's 10 or 11.
Yeah, something like that. Do you take them? Because you're going to have to start, you've got, 2 years left with Cutler on this contract. You've got to start looking for somebody to work into the system. I don't know if David Fales is going to be the solution.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. I mean, they have shown confidence by making him the backup.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. It's something. It's a great question. I've thought about it a little bit, but not a whole lot. I guess it would just depend on, to me, whoever that guy would be, whether you thought that was the long-term possible long-term solution. If you did, if you liked him well enough to say that he is, I think that, because here's what I'd say. They obviously, you've said they need help at various spots.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, in my way of thinking anyway, if everybody that they have currently, say, stayed on the roster.
Stop yawning, John. I saw that.
And they all took that next step in their progress, in their pro careers, I'd be satisfied with that. And then I would say, if you thought that was going to happen, then I'd say, look at the QB spot, because you have a great point. I mean,
right.
But if you thought there was some really, really big area of need, and I know there's a lot of need, but I don't think there's any one glaring area that I saw. I mean, if Kevin White comes back and does well, and they say they franchise Jeffrey, your receiving core, I think, should be good. Okay. And that this year, if you wanted to point to a glaring need, that was what it was, because you didn't have those two guys.
Right. I think the best line I heard all year was, with some of the games Cutler has, he was thrown to a who's who of who the hell is he?
Yeah. Yeah. Although, Cutler, I've heard people in the past say Cutler isn't a great leader, but when you hear what he says in the paper anyway, and they talked to him about the receiving core the last game of the year, because you were without I mean, the receiving core was who? Mariani and Bellamy and Meredith, right?
Right.
And, he used all their nicknames, and he said, hey, those guys went out there and they laid it on the line. He says they played as hard as they could. And he says, I was happy with what they did.
Sure.
So
it's kind of funny, too, because as we watched Michigan State this year, when we watched some games on TV, Dana kept telling me, she said, Connor Cook reminds me so much of Jay Cutler. And I said, why? He said, he makes the jerk face.
The jerk face.
He can do the Cutler jerk face really well. I think it's I don't know. It's going to be an interesting playoff season. I have no idea. Who could be the favorite. What's going to happen? I have no pick yet for Super Bowl.
Oh, there's no way. You know what? To me,
Carolina might be the team, and if they do, God bless them, because you got Chico Rivera.
You do. Although, here's what I have to say. There's 4 teams that come to mind. The Packers sort of go limping into the playoffs.
Right.
But you know what? You can never discount Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. You've got Seattle going in as a wild card.
Right.
But you can never discount Seattle. They've played well at times, and they've not played not so well at times. New England played great all during the beginning of the year. I had said, I don't know if I said it on this program, but the day that Rob Gronkowski got hurt, and I said, you know what, they're going to have problems the rest of the year, and they did. And so they're sort of iffy in the playoffs.
And if Edelman was another loss for them too.
The other team that I'm going to say, even though they ended up with 1 loss on the year, that I think is iffy, is Carolina. I'm always leery of a team that sort of gets on a roll, doesn't have much to play for a bit of the year, and is that team going to be able to get back in gear where they're going to play playoff type football?
Yeah, that's a good question. By the way, did something happen to Peanut Tillman?
Yes, he's out. It's a knee. He's done for the year.
He's done for the year.
Yeah,
that's pretty much done for his career.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a tweet from Lance Briggs about that over the other day, and I was trying to look and find out what happened to him, and I missed it.
Yeah, it's
Couldn't find
ACL, MCL, whatever. One of those CLs he got.
He blew a CL.
Yeah, he blew a CL.
That's a shame. That's a tough end to his career.
Hey, I wanted to switch gears with you a little. One of the things I'd been thinking about, just to myself, and I'll throw it out here on the program. I think it was somebody was talking to me a couple days ago about this, that the with Hayward being signed by the Cubs.
Yeah.
You have Cespedes and Gordon, 2 better than average outfielders,
right.
Let's say, put it that way. I'm not going to go gaga, but good outfielders out there that are on the free agent market, and both of them been rumored as maybe coming to the Sox. And that would mean, to me at least, that probably a likely guy to be traded would be Avisail Garcia.
Yeah.
And then I started to think about trades today, and I'm thinking, well, there's 3 things in trades. Do you trade, say, whoever it is? Do you trade that guy hoping to get similar value in return?
Need for need or value for value.
Do you trade that guy just for prospects, and it could be any prospects? And the other thing that always comes into play, and I don't think so much like in the case of a Garcia, because I don't know that he's making that kind of money yet, but other guys who are making big money, or are you just trading to dump salary? And I know that baseball would be a bad example. They don't have a salary cap per se.
No, but I mean,
are
they
you
have that
dump? Are you
royalty.
say if it was football or hockey or basketball? I think I was thinking about Joakim Noah, his situation, or the Bulls. Say if you were going to trade Noah, that might be a better idea than Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trade Noah and try to get value for value?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which would mean what? A similar type of player. I think one of the big things, it's nothing against Joakim Noah. I will always be a fan of his. He plays hard as he can. But one of the big benefits of Noah not being able to play is you got some room for Portis to come in and play.
Right.
So
right.
you really don't want another similar player
You don't
back
want
for Noah
sure.
if you're going to
No.
trade him.
Mm-mm.
Or do you trade him for, you're not going to get a first-round draft pick for him, so do you trade him for like a second-round draft pick? Or do you trade him for some guys you're just going to discard anyway, just so you could say you got something? And the other consideration there, the better, and this is the better example, do you just trade him, get a couple of guys who are bench guys that you're just going to have sit on the bench that don't cost you much, so that you can get rid of his salary and have some room to add somebody next year or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting. It's not just like when we were kids, a trade was just for need.
Need
basically.
for need, and that's kind of disappeared. Honestly, if they looked in the case of the White Sox, I mean, they keep saying all along is we have done well producing pitchers.
Yeah.
Even though they got rid of their best prospect and Frankie Montas and that deal that I still am trying to understand. But we haven't done well finding developing position players.
Right.
Although they got rid of
Two
position players that I thought would be pretty doggone good.
Yeah, I mean, they were the top guys.
Had potential to be pretty doggone good. So what do you do? What do you do then? Let's just say you sign a Gordon, and I think I'd rather take Gordon over Cespedes.
I definitely would.
Do you get rid of Garcia and look for position players? Look for prospects. Get yourself 2 or 3 prospects.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way Hahn and Kenny.
Kenny Williams.
Kenny Williams think.
Getting old. Sorry.
Yeah,
I understand. I understand the feeling.
You know what, Jim? It's interesting. You brought up Cespedes and Gordon, and I was thinking of Garcia. The other thing that I was thinking as I was thinking about trades is, you take a guy like a Garcia, who was the top prospect in the Detroit system, and really was gotten pretty cheaply by the Sox.
Yeah.
Now the Sox are looking to probably move him. I would say they are. Or you take a guy like Cespedes, whose numbers are always pretty good, but he's been with Oakland, he's been with Boston, he's been with Detroit, he's been with New York. Now he's going to be on his 5th team, and I don't think he's been in the league even 5 years.
I don't think
6.
so either.
And so there's 2 things. I mean, even a guy with good stats like Cespedes has, Garcia is not in that same situation. But there's 2 reasons guys move around. Either they get to the place they're at and people say, well, this isn't what I thought I was going to get, so they want to move them on. Or you get a guy, say, like a Ben Zobrist, who the Cubs got, who has started to move around a little bit because the Cubs will be his 4th team. But that guy is moving because, excuse me, he's got value.
He's a vet, right.
Right. And it's interesting why guys move, how often they move and why do they move so often. But it's usually either one of 2 things. Either, geez, I got this guy, and yeah, does he hit a lot of home runs and do a lot of stuff, but he's really, for some reason, his numbers are good, but he's not having that big impact. Or you get another guy who, no matter where he goes, is having a good impact on the team.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Interesting way to look at things.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think that's why we enjoy sports. I don't know. I was at work before I came here, and I always go to the Yahoo search engine, right? And I don't know if it's what anniversary it would be, but it'd probably be 30 or 40 years. The Raiders had won the Super Bowl. I believe they beat the Redskins, and one of the stars of the game was Jack Squirek. He had intercepted a pass, I believe, and went a long way for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He was a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's an Illinois product.
I
University
think so.
Of Illinois.
That's what I'm running back in my head, thinking. I think he was U of I.
And it's these things, these unexpected things, these unexpected heroes, these all of the interesting interconnectedness, the humanity of the whole thing. I think, that you see in sports that really provokes our interest in it.
It really is, and when you hear some things that kind of trigger other memories, today I was when I was driving here, I had the score on, and they always have the CBS Sports Minute, and the one after 10 o'clock is Boomer Esiason.
Okay.
And he was checking the birthday list today and wishing a happy birthday to his old head coach, Sam Weich.
Oh, yeah, Sam Weich, sure.
He says, and Sam's 71. He said he was a very innovative man.
Mm-hmm.
He said he was very passionate about things. He says, and he said, just to give you that, he says, and just to give you this clip to prove it, I remember this when he, it was a game, I think it was a game in Cincinnati, and apparently the crowd was rather rowdy and started throwing things and snowballs onto the field at the players, and Weich got a hold of the PA. And he says, anybody who throws anything, he says, you keep an eye on them. He says, if they throw anything, you get security and have them thrown out of the game. He said, this isn't Cleveland. We're in Cincinnati.
Hey, Jim, speaking of...
and there was the guy who really brought the no-huddle offense to pro ball.
Sam Weich.
Yeah.
So, last night, we're watching sport... I don't know if it was SportsCenter, but it was a show on ESPN, and it must have been SportsCenter because they were going through all kinds of different sports. And Ezekiel Elliott, the running back from Ohio State, is going to go pro.
Mid first round pick on a couple of projections I've seen.
The one talking head is saying, I don't know if he said or Urban Meyer said. I don't think it was Urban Meyer because I don't think Urban Meyer would be stupid enough to say this, but I think he said it. The talking
don't
head,
sell him short.
that Ezekiel Elliott, probably the best running back to come out of Ohio State. Apologies, and then the idiot says apologies to Eddie George, and I'm thinking, tell that to Hopalong Cassidy,
Archie Griffin,
John Brockington, Bob White, Bob Ferguson.
Oh my God!
Apologies just to Eddie George. I mean, give me a break.
That's about as dumb as a comment that I heard this summer that they played during a Sox game when Hawk was talking about center fielders. And he thought Willie Wilson was one of the best center fielders he ever saw. He could cover anything, and Stone said, well, you got to leave room on your list for a fellow named Mays.
Yeah.
And Hawk went, no, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And he started to go off into his reasons, and I could just see Stoney in the booth going with a facepalm.
Well, I think you get yourself in deep stuff when you start to make comparisons, because as you're talking, obviously Willie Mays, and no disrespect to Willie Wilson, because he's actually excellent center fielder, but I'm thinking, if you're Hawk Harrelson, you've certainly seen not only Willie Mays, but you've seen Jimmy Pearsall, who was a great center fielder.
Very underrated ball player for his
Joe
career.
DiMaggio,
Right.
who Hawk probably didn't see,
No.
but he was a kid when DiMaggio was playing.
Yeah.
So he probably knew of him, Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
Pretty good center fielder.
Yeah, DiMaggio quit.
Mickey Mantle,
Yeah.
a damn good center fielder.
How could you forget it? How could you?
I mean, what are you talking about, Hawk? I mean, and this is not to disrespect Willie Wilson. I mean, a really good center fielder. But how are you even bringing this up?
And just talk about the case of the stupids that some of these guys get when they get in front of a microphone.
Definitely.
But that doesn't include us because
No,
John,
John's
John's going,
head.
no, not us. We just keep going on, and we rattle off. And once again, as I look at the clock, we've somehow managed to fill about another hour.
Well, you know what? I'm sort of disappointed, though, John, because I think, did you lose the Priest number? Because Jim, at one point in the broadcast, said HE double hockey sticks, and I just said,
Damn.
Yeah. And you didn't even notice. You must really be. You know what? We're going to have to get you to no-dose for the next session. Oh, man.
I have to get Kevin here to program this equipment so anytime anything bad goes over the air.
Are you gonna put us on a 7-second?
No.
You're gonna put us on a 7-second, John?
My hands don't.
You don't
activate that
react
fast
that
enough.
I thought you were going to have a dump button in there.
No.
All right. Well, I think we managed to get through another
Hey,
hour.
you know what? I was gonna
Anything
say,
else on your mind?
Happy New Year, Jim.
Yeah,
to
the
you.
same to you.
John, Happy New Year
Same
to you.
to you.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, although he will never, it would be a total upset if he ever heard this, but a buddy of mine by the name of Tito Cruz, he and his wife had their first baby. I don't know if they've named her. It's a girl, 8 pounds and I forget how many ounces, 20 some inches long, 20 and a quarter, I think. And just want to congratulate Tito. He's a class guy. His wife as well. The few times I met her, nice lady, and at a fairly late age, because I think they're both in their mid-30s. They are having their first. So congratulations.
I had seen a and I'm my mind is such that I look at something now and I say, oh, I can remember this and bring it up on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea what it was, but I think I saw something on one of our from one of our classmates who had celebrated a anniversary, and I wish I could remember who it was.
Oh, that's informative, Jim.
Actually, one that I just remembered, and even though she was not a classmate, she was my neighbor for many years. Linda Guerin and her husband Chuck Corona. Linda was class of '65.
Okay.
At Ridgewood. Yesterday they celebrated their 47th wedding anniversary.
Lord.
I know Linda will never hear this, but but Linda and I play Words with Friends on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So I keep in touch with Linda that way, but congratulations to them making 47 years.
And
I can't even add mine up to come to 47.
Yeah, I apologize, John. That sent us over a couple, 2-3 minutes.
John goes, I turned it. He said, actually, I turned it off about two minutes ago. You're just talking into a dead mic right now. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna get out of here. We had a lot of fun again today, rambling off on whatever topics we ramble off on. We got a basketball game coming up on Thursday night.
We
got a girls' game.
Boys or girls?
Girls' game.
We got girls. Okay.
And then we'll have some boys' games coming up, and we'll come up and ramble away for a basketball game again. And actually, maybe with a little luck, the game that we describe is actually going to be the game that's in front of us.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for listening. As always, thanks to the Doctor of the Dials, John DeVita. Thanks to Rich Massaro for once again making it an interesting and entertaining morning for us. And we will catch you soon. We are out of here. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, January the 6th, the year of our Lord, 2016, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS FM sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, January the 5th, the year of our Lord, 2016. Until next time, please be safe, and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.